real-world problems. The human hard for most of us to think even of a day without any of our mobile or computing devices. We have started to adapt and develop solutions using these devices to make our lives simpler and better. In this session, we have two presentations representing two scenarios where real-world problems are solved using computing. By the end of each presentation, we have a Q&A session followed by the presentation. The first presentation, City Campus, is an online virtual travel navigation system application which uses the Bollywood method in dramatizing scenarios to overcome the barriers to communicate. So let's welcome Sumita Sharma to present to us extending the Bollywood to collaborative online conversational learning language. Let me start by introducing Sumita. She is working with speech-based and pervasive interaction group at Tauchi, the University of Tampere in Finland. Her research is motivated by the need to design inclusive and collaborative educational opportunities for children with little to no access to educational technologies. She is working on designing globally and socially collaborative interactive application for Indian women and children. So let's welcome Sumita to take it over.
Thanks, Rupa. Really excited to be here and present my research. I haven't done it alone. I have my colleague, Pekka Kalionami, who designed and developed the application that I used, and our guide, Professor Marco Turunen. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here today, so I'm the lucky one who gets to present this research. So we're all from the University of Tampere in Finland, and we work at the Tampere unit for human-computer interaction. That's a picture of my university. It's probably just as snowy and cold right there, right now. So I'm even more lucky to be here in warm India and super awesome Bangalore, where it's really pleasant. So today I'll talk about conversational language learning, and it's about the City Campus application, like I said. So conversational language learning is actually quite difficult. I mean, even in schools, when you learn a foreign language, for instance, in India, we all learn English. Everyone's, the teachers also focus on the grammar first. So it's about getting the grammar right. But that doesn't instill a lot of confidence in the learner to actually start conversing in the language, because the language is new, you don't know if you'll make a mistake, and there's just so much emphasis on having the correct grammar. So we talked to the experts at the University of Tampere, the language teachers there, to ask how can we encourage learners of a foreign language to start communicating in that language and have the confidence to start conversing. So they had a lot of ideas, and one of them that we really liked was this idea that you put the learner in an environment where that's the only language they can use. So it's kind of like going to a foreign city, for example, say Paris, where they don't really like talking in English, which is the language that we know that's probably common. So you're kind of, if you're learning French, you're forced to start using French, even if it's grammatically incorrect, but you're forced to start conversing in that language, and you become more confident. Of course, you use a lot of gestures with it, and there's, several aspects of that, to that as well. So what we wanted to do was remove this sort of difficulty in conversational language learning and make a fun sort of game out of it and encourage people to start communicating in the language that they're learning. So like I said, Pekka designed and developed this City Campus application with the language teachers, and the idea of this application is to immerse the learner in these 360-degree panoramic views of actual cities. So the idea is that you have two people, a tourist and a guide, who collaboratively navigate these beautiful panoramic views of actual cities, and they navigate through about a series of 6 to 7 panoramas. So they will go through these panoramas, communicating together, and the idea is that you have arrived to a specific location in the city, and you have a pre-assigned destination where you want to go. So you communicate together to find out how you can get there. So this is a tourist view of the application. So the tourist sees the panorama and also sees several green arrows. So these green arrows are exits to move forward. And to make it more difficult, we put more than one. So there's, say there are about 4 of these exits in one panorama. Only one of them will take you forward in the correct way forward. One of them will take you back from where you came, like it is when you are traveling. And then the others will take you to a dead end. So it's like a wrong turn. In this application, what happens in a dead end is that the tourist sees a culturally sensitive image of the city. So we try and also encourage discussions on culture. So you would see this image, and now you have to describe this image to the guide, and the guide sees 4 options, and they have to select the right one. So in this way, at each step, we're trying to encourage communication between the tourist and the guide using this foreign language. And of course, when you're learning a foreign language, you might not have the vocabulary to actually have a conversation. So we provided these sort of informative clues within the panorama. For example, here you see this, the trash can is highlighted, it's slightly red, and there's like a written clue about it. So it's like, this is a trash can with advertisements. So for example, if the guide says, what do you see? The tourists, in this case through mouse hovers, look at elements in the panorama and get some vocabulary to describe what the tourist is seeing. And the guide has the same information and the same elements that are marked. So in that way, they can find, where they are within the panorama and guide each other. This is the guide's view. So the guide, the only difference is the guide doesn't see green arrows, but sees a blue line, which indicates the correct exit. And here I've highlighted the highlighted hotspot, or the clue in the panorama is the McDonald's restaurant. So you see that's like a little bit red. So there are 3 modes of interaction for the City Compass application. Traditional mouse and keyboard, which is the one we used for our study. A gesture-based version with the Kinect, that's in the first picture here. So what happens in the gesture-based version is you use your own body to interact. So for example, to go left or right, you would move your shoulders. So you would pan by moving your shoulders. And the part that I really like is selecting the green exit. So you kind of walk towards them. So it's kind of like walking. So you walk into the green exits. And you select the hotspots by just pointing at them through hover. We're also working on a head-mounted virtual reality version of this application because, VR is so cool. And there you interact with head orientation. So you could walk around, you could go around within the environment when you're wearing your glasses. And you, depending on what you're looking at and the way your head is oriented, you can select hotspots and the green arrows. One really cool thing about the virtual reality glasses is that we're actually using panoramic videos instead of pictures. So it's even more immersive. And the idea is that because once you're immersed in the environment, people like to explore a lot. So they move around and they don't realize that it's just a video that's looping for maybe 30 seconds, but it feels like you're looking at everything for the first time. So it's really, it's very immersive. Okay, so we took the City Compass application that was developed in Finland. And for my research, I was like, okay, I want to see if we can have Indian children use this application for learning English as a foreign language. And I wanted to see the challenges that they would face. So I worked with an organization called the Palio, and they have several of these non-government schools across Delhi's industrial area. So they cater to students from sort of underprivileged backgrounds that live in that industrial area, in these urban informal settlements around that area. So they did not have a lot of computer experience. So we ran sessions with them where the children were tourists to Finland, to Tampere, where my university is, and a Finnish researcher was their guide to that city. And there were about 22 participants who took part in this study, and 3 of them were using a laptop for the first time. So here's a short video about the study that we ran. And no, okay, so let's not worry about that. There's a YouTube link, and if you, I think you'll get all the material, and then you can watch the video online. I highly recommend it. It's really fun to watch. It was shot inside the Palio School, so you really get to see the classroom and the infrastructure that they have, and the motivation of the students. So what you've missed in the video, I'll just explain in the slides that come up. So what were our findings from this study? We found a lot of sociocultural differences in communication, kind of like as expected. For example, especially in the Indian culture, it's culturally impolite to give negative feedback. So if the guide would ask, for example, if the guide would ask, what do you see? Or do you see a traffic signal? So the child, the participant, would not say, no, I don't see it, or not yet, or I'm looking for it. They would just go quiet and start searching for it. And actually making the head movements as well. So they would search, and then they would pan, and then they would search. And then once they found it, they would say, yes, now I see it. But on the other side, there's no video calling here, it's just an audio call. On the other side, we have the Finnish researcher who's just had like 2 minutes of silence, not knowing if the participant has understood the question, is lost, or is confused. So there's this awkward silence. But the Indian side, they don't want to say no. They don't want to reply right away. They only want to give a positive reply. So they wait till they can give one. So we saw that that really hindered the communication. There are also very rigid social norms between children and adults, which kind of exaggerated this giving negative feedback or countering anything the guide would say. So, you know, if the guide would, they would just wait to reply to the guide. It was more like a yes or no. Do you see this? Look for it. Yes. If they can't find it, they would just keep looking and then in panic look back at me. I was moderating the sessions. So we saw that there was not really a conversation. It was still this sort of just following instructions. And there was also a lot of, like I said, computer and gaming inexperience. So these children were not very comfortable using a laptop. In fact, I saw so many creative ways that they used the mouse for panning, you know, especially the ones that were using a laptop for the first time. It was amazing. Like, I never knew you could use a mouse like that. Like, so the finger was fixed and the device was being rotated. I thought that was awesome. At the end of each session, we also asked the children what they believe they learned. Actually, we did a kind of a tricky thing. We asked them, do you believe you learned something today? A lot of them would say yes. Then we said, what? What do you believe you learned? So we saw that there was a focus on the interaction rather than the conversation as we would have liked. So about 40% said that they learned to use a computer today. Instead of what we wanted to hear was, I learned to speak in English today. So we took it as a challenge. How can City Campus be adapted to encourage Indian children to collaborate with a Finnish researcher? And we only focused on the Indian perspective for this study. So we went back into research that's been going on in UX or UEX, as I've heard. I don't know how to pronounce that yet. And we found this wonderful thing called the Bollywood Method. So the Bollywood Method was devised by Apala Chavan at Human Factors International. And she devised it because she was facing a problem in conducting usability studies with Indian adults for an airline online booking service. So she would invite the participants and ask them to book tickets. And even though the interface was very challenging, they were not able to complete the task, they would never give a negative reply. They would not tell her the issues that they were facing with the interface. So they would clearly, there was a struggle that was going on, but there was sort of no way to find out why there was that struggle. What are the differences between the designer's model of that interface and the user's expectation? She attributed this especially to societies with large power distance, such as ours, and the universal phenomena of face saving, where the idea is that you never intentionally be in a situation where there would be a conflict or a confrontation. So, you know, the participants would never say, this is rubbish. I cannot book my ticket on this website. Something needs to change. So they would not do that. So she thought of the Bollywood method, where she presented users with a dramatized scenario that would require them to take a role of a character and overcome these sort of cultural limitations to communication. So I really like the example that she took. So for this sort of booking a ticket online, she would tell the participant that your niece is getting married. So say your niece is getting married in Mumbai, you're in Bangalore, and she's getting married tomorrow. And you weren't planning to go, but suddenly you've just found incriminating evidence that the guy she's going to marry is an underworld don in Mumbai. And you know what? He's already married. Now you must book your tickets to stop your niece from marrying this person. And suddenly there was just like all this feedback coming in on how the interface was bad and what were the challenges. You know, it was like, oh my God, I need to stop this wedding. And you know, weddings in India has this really deep sort of cultural meaning. So then suddenly you know, everything just went out the window. You know, no, forget about being polite. I need to book tickets. And she was able to really get the challenges out. So I really like that idea. It really resonated with me. And I thought, let's try this for City Campus. So we decided to add our own Bollywood story to the City Campus application. Ours was basically, we conducted another study where we added the Bollywood method. The only difference between the two studies was the addition of the Bollywood method. Our scenario was about the students. So they've gone to Finland on a very long class trip. And now they have been suddenly left behind. A local is willing to help them, and they have to quickly reach a place where their classmates are before they leave, and they're lost forever in Finland. So we kind of, you know, tried to create this dramatized scenario for a 10-year-old. And we conducted a study with 22 participants. This time in our sample, there were 11 participants who were using a computer for the first time. So what did we find? We found that by extending the Bollywood method to City Campus, what we wanted to see was, you know, also this focus that shifted from learning how to use the computer to talking to the guide. So 90% of the participants said, today I learned how to communicate in English, or today I learned how to talk to a guide or a foreign guide. which was really, really promising for us. Given the fact that we only had 3 participants who were using a laptop for the first time in the first study and 11 of those in the second study. There were also considerable changes in the gameplay behavior. So for example, the overall time taken to complete the task to reach the pre-assigned destination within the application, we saw a dramatic reduction in the overall time. Of course, we can attribute this to the sense of urgency that we created in our story, but the other sort of gameplay behavior, for example, selection of hotspots, we saw an increase in that in the second study with the Bollywood method. We also saw an increase in panning, so they were looking around more in the second study. However, the average number of wrong turns or dead ends remained constant in both the studies. Okay, one thing that we missed in the video also was the long silence, which I explained. So that also reduced in this study. We heard a lot of no, just no, which was really, really nice to hear. And the conversation shifted from monosyllable responses, which I said, less, yes, okay, to actual sentences. So if the guide would ask, what do you see? And if the hotpot said a car, they would frame the sentence as, I see a car. So there's already conversation that was going on. So this is really exciting work for us, and we believe that by incorporating culturally situated tools to City Compass, this collaborative learning application, this allowed students to overcome communication and also technology barriers that was hindering their goal, the learning goal. To us, this opens up extremely interesting possibilities for cross-cultural collaborative learning applications for other learning goals as well, for children who have very little computer experience. And we believe that this would transcend other cultures, barriers that are faced in communication in other Asian cultures as well. So, thank you. Went schools. Actually, the one that we went to is now in a learning center. So these children, they actually attend government schools in the morning because there's a lot of issues there, like the teachers aren't there or they're not able to really learn anything. The parents enroll them to the Palio, where they have these sort of remedial educational classes in the afternoon. So these were children who were living in the Okla industrial area and going to government schools, but their parents had huge aspirations for them. They wanted them to get an education. So they were actually shelling out 150 rupees a month to get this sort of like private tuitions, but in this institution that's very close to the area that they live.
Is it visible throughout the country or some particular states? Divalaya.org.
Sorry? Yeah, so it's throughout the country. They have, I think, about 4 schools in Delhi and then some in the neighboring states. They also have a boarding school in Haryana, in Guspeti. I've been there as well. So it's like I think it's a 27-year-old organization that's been working with children. Now they're also working for other issues like women empowerment. They have a very positive approach towards education. So they think about education as a community learning experience. So for example, the children that are enrolled at Dipalia can bring their, so they have a community library where they can bring their siblings and their parents, usually the mothers, throughout the school day to kind of start learning with them. So it's one of those organizations. They also have this, I should mention this, it's like some advertisement for the Palio, but they have this really amazing program that I liked. It's called the Father-Daughter Initiative. And every Saturday, fathers have to accompany their daughters to the school, and they have some sort of like an activity, like making some crafts or some sort of a game-based activity. So I find that really interesting, especially in India. So I feel like it gives the opportunity for the father to really see the daughter as a person, as somebody who has aspirations, and somebody who wants to learn and be someone. So I find that really positive.
Thank you.
Technical challenges you would have faced in making this project actually, apart from execution and testing? Let you know this.
Right. So this application was actually made in Finland with the language teachers. So we identified a problem that it's very difficult to encourage people to start communicating in a foreign language that they're learning. So we went within our university to the language teachers there. And we asked them what sort of tools and exercises they were using in their classroom and what they think is the best way to kind of force someone to start communicating. And then we worked with them. So this application took about, I think, 3 months to develop. There have been several iterations and versions. I took it to India only after I think it had been developed and revised and kind of polished, and I took it after a year because I was like, okay, so I could see, so it was used for German language learning and Finnish language learning. And then they were branching into English. And as soon as I heard English, I was like, okay, we learned that in India. Let's try, let's see how it works.
Hi.
Just come back, yeah.
So, apart from German, English, and Finnish, is it?
Yeah.
Is the application extendable to any other languages, any other cities? Like for in India, every state has a different language.
Yes.
How do you incorporate all these different language, even regional languages for
Right.
that matter?
Yeah, so it is extendable. We've actually made an editor for this application, and you can take panoramic pictures and create all the elements like exits and hotspots and add, so for example, for the application, the language support is hotspots, and there's also like a dictionary to help. So that's what you need. Otherwise, it's all through communication. So if you get the person, so in this case, we've been working with a guide who's fluent in one language. Of course, you can have learners on both sides. But it is extendable. There's an editor. And actually, one of the things we want to look at is user-generated content. We wanted to also, maybe going forward, we'll do that. We'll give, you can take any normal phone and take like panoramic pictures. It's really easy now to do that. So we want to be able to, we were thinking, or we plan to do this, to give children that we're working with, to give them the phones and ask them to create routes and see what they want to show as, where they live. And then we will get Finnish students who would participate as tourists to the Indian students' routes that they develop.
Okay, thank you. Apart from knowing the language, there are certain gestures, certain words that every language has, which may have a positive, negative, depending on the culture.
Right.
So, do you incorporate those?
So unfortunately, right now, we only have this sort of audio communication. We are also looking at a video communication that would kind of bring out, the other nuances, like the non-verbal communication. So we do plan to incorporate a small sort of window where you could actually have a video communication while you're using the application to be able to bring that sort of richness of the non-verbal communication to the application.
Thank you.
Like initially when you would have got this idea, on what basis you selected the language which you wanted to target first?
Right. So I think in that it was more like opportunistic based on the teachers that were working with us and not really any other sort of planning. So I think, yeah, you. That's a really good question. So for at least for the German and Finnish language experiments, they were done with university students. So we saw that it also encouraged them. For the Indian audience, we've only worked with 10 to 15-year-olds. So I really can't comment on what the results would be. I'm hoping they would be similar and as positive. We did have a lot of the teachers who wanted to be part of this application and start using it to improve their own English communication. So that's definitely very positive, but I don't know what the results would be. Okay. Okay.
So how many of those children, they were exposed to English for the first time in that, or were they already knew English? And because, I mean, the main intention of this application was to actually enable them learn a new language, or is it to enable more communication in the same language which they already know?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. The idea was to encourage communication and language they're learning. So a lot of the children were already learning English in school. Of course, it's kind of questionable as to how well they were learning it. They were going to these government schools and attending these remedial classes at the Palio. But they had, I think, on average, I don't remember, maybe 5 years, so they were learning it since first grade or whenever they start in school. But it was not as good, like the sort of skills that they had. So we did do this really quick preliminary test before we actually made them use the application. So the idea, as you saw, was to be able to at least read out words to be able to communicate, So I would kind of ask them their name in English and see if they were able to understand. So first of all, I looked at if they understood English, and second, if they were able to read. So even if they were able to read like small 3-letter, 4-letter words, there's like an instructions screen. Everybody can go to the URL of City Compass and try it out. It's really fun. And it has an instruction screen. So I would ask them to read out. And if I saw that they were able to read out most of the words, then I would let them use the application. So the idea is that to encourage them to communicate. It's not like a beginner's, level 1 for English, but it's more like maybe they have been hearing the language, but they're not comfortable in communicating with it.
I understand this application needs a real-time guide to the languages. So does this bring a constraint if you want to expand it at a larger scale?
Yes, it does. That's correct. So the idea that we wanted to promote here is to have an actual person on the other side. So 2 people communicating. Of course, the guide could be an expert, could be another learner. So in that sense, if you have a group of students who want to learn, then they can be paired together. So one of them could be the guide and one of them could be the tourist. Of course, the only drawback in that scenario is that they might revert back to the language that they know. So that is one constraint of this application. But we're hoping that this becomes, very successful worldwide. And you could just log in and instantly connect to a guide in some other part of the country and start interacting with them, as is common now in these sort of mobile games where you can connect to people across the world. So we're hoping this picks up. Hopefully, if all of you spread the word, it will, and then it would be possible, and then you don't have to really wait to connect to someone. Okay, thank you.
Us would have had a very quick time juggling to reach the place here. And I'm also very sure you would have all had a very quick breakfast and come here. In this changing lifestyle today, we are spending very less time to know or make healthy choices of what we have been eating. So let's meet our friend Bruna, who's a researcher, and let's see what she would have to say about her research on her research on Platter, Smarter Food Experience, the result of an academic project done at the NID, India, and Samsung R&D Bangalore. The research is aimed at understanding personalized health and food systems in Indian cities through a system design approach. This study explored if mobile technology could help to change it using the concept of smart data and personalized learning information system. Bhuvan Shekhar works as a user experience designer at Cisco Systems in Bangalore. She received her bachelor's in design in product design from the National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad. She has worked in areas of HCI, system-oriented design, and user experience design at Samsung R&D and Cisco in intern and lead position. So let's ask Bhuvan to take it forward.
Good, yes. So this is my first time at GHCI, so I'll just set my expectations clear. So, okay. So this is basically a story. I'm going to tell it like a story. So there's this famous quote that says, one cannot think well, sleep well, love well, if one has not dined well, if one has not eaten well. So what does eaten well today mean? It's not just eating things that are, good, that are fresh, that are organic. It also means what suits you, what is suiting according to your body type, right? So today, this presentation is basically about your food experience, my food experience. Do we know our food experience? How good is it? How bad is it? Does it suit us and not? So this is a story about Sandy. Sandy is one of my friends. She's just like us, a woman in business and technology, and she's been here in Bangalore, let's say for a couple of years. She faces some like really, really major issues. She really wants to be fit. But she, like me, her spirit animal is like Po in the Kung Fu Panda movie. We eat like crazy. So remaining fit is a challenge, right? The basic things that stop us from being fit are like, I go to a market, I don't know what to buy. I mean, when I was young, I would go with my mother and she'll be like, Bhaiya, ye kya hai, ye kya hai? And I'll be like, okay. And today, I'm still at that same stage. And number two is, frankly, I don't know if it's fair to say, but I don't get time. By the time I go home, I'm really, really tired. So let's start. My name is Bhuvna Shekhar. I did this as a diploma graduation project for 6.5, 7 months with Samsung R&D Bangalore and National Institute of Design, Gujarat. I'm not with Samsung anymore. I work as a UX designer at Cisco. So this project was my first entry into the whole domain of HCI and interaction design. I'm a product designer by profession, so there are a lot of ups and downs in the story that you will see. So let's continue. So this project is basically divided in two parts. I'm going to talk about what data is. All of us know information. All of us know what data is. But is there any value to it? And number two, I'm going to talk about a hidden key. And then we'll talk about how our project went forward. So today, information is the new power. All of us know it, right? We give, share, take, consume so much of information in so many different ways, through our devices, through the web, through our wearables, and so many different ways and methodologies. And it all feeds into this big, huge mountain of big data. And especially today with the improvements in sensors and IoT things, and like, for example, even I use a wearable. We are essentially quantifying information about ourselves. Right? We are having our own personal treasure trove of information. But all this going back, what is the value of all this information? What can you do with this information? So through this project, I'm saying that instead of it just being a black box, a mystery box of data, how can you make it like a valuable source, a gift box, let's say? So contextualization is the key. What do I mean by that? So let's say information about you. It could be in different domains like health, banking, financial matters, you're going out, your location. So when we put all of that, let's say we vectorize all that information in terms of what, when, where, why, and how. That is, what is the activity? Where are you? What is the location? What is the time that you're doing something? Why are you doing something? Through all that information, if you basically, these become important markers for doing anything, and then the information becomes smarter, right? And today, mobile phone is one of the best ways to do it because it knows two things. It knows the context of the user, and it knows the intent of the user. It knows where you are. It follows you. You carry your mobile everywhere. And it knows what you want to do. So why food and health? Food and health because personally, I really like that field. And number two is that I feel it's like all of us are so affected by it, but we do not give enough importance to it. All of us are affected by food and health. And it's not just one single change. It's a lifetime change, right? We don't observe its changes in a single day. We have lots of questions. We have lots of doubts. You know, what to buy, where to buy, what is the difference between this and this? Will this suit me? Will this not? And then obviously there are a lot of parameters that come in, like, is this affordable? What is the price? Where is this organic? What is the quality like? And the whole experience of making it. Some people do not have enough skills or enough inspiration or enough time, like me, for example. And then if you end up cooking for other people, trust me, they don't come back home. And how to make this experience better? Like sometimes it's not even you, people out of the best intentions, but like for example, let's say you have a bai coming at your place. She cooks really good food, but does that suit you? So my question here is, how can we make the food experience personal? So this is my brief. How can we create indoor and smarter food experiences using system-oriented design thinking? So what does a smarter food experience mean? It is at the center of all these things, right? Design, technology, health, food and cuisine, and sociology. Some of you might ask, why sociology? Sociology is essentially people's behaviors, understanding the emotional aspect of why people do things. Right? And food and health is so intrinsically linked to every person. So understanding this became even more important. So the project takes flight. So this is Sandy. Sandy is 23 years old. And just like all of us, this is her typical food experience. She looks for what to buy. Maybe, let's say something got over at home. She saw something new. She wants to try out something. She plans on what to buy. And it's always in like, ghar pe kya hai, kya nahi hai, you know, making that mix and match. Decision process, where to go? Do you want to buy it online, offline? Do you want to go to the sabzi mandi, or where do you want to go? Buying process, very critical, because once you reach there, there is always a split second that goes on, you know. Sometimes there's so many options that we either don't end up buying anything, or then what we end up buying is generally not what we want to buy. The cooking experience of, like I told you about, the consumption experience. When you eat something, Does it make you feel good? We all have the concept of comfort food. So how can we connect to the food? And post-consumption feelings. Okay, we ate something, but it didn't suit me. What do we do about that? Like, do we go and tell people? What are the different steps that we take? So Sandy essentially is a happy person. But what happens is that when it becomes a habit, when things don't go as per plan, she becomes sad. So I decided, how can we help Sandy? I did some research and analysis for this project. Primary research was, I read books and blogs and papers and all the usual means to understand the health today, the food production, wearables and health technology, different aspects around it. The secondary research went and visited a few food experience centers, and ethnographic research. Ethnographic research is like my favorite part, because when you get to talk to people, that's when you get to know what their motivations are, what their beliefs are. Right? So we talked to people from various socioeconomic backgrounds, and then we did a little bit of behavior mapping. And then that's what essentially drove this project forward. So these are the factors unique for any project. What is occupation, gender, location, ages of people. But for this project, some of them were more crucial. For example, especially since we're talking about mobile technology, what is a digital identity? Right? There are some people who are very comfortable sharing things on via the internet. Some are not. Some people have a lot of privacy concerns. Social networking. Some people love sharing things. They are like social Twitterati birds, right? And mobile sophistication. Not everyone uses the same type of mobiles. So I talked to 24 people, 21 to 52 years, from all over the country. This was very intensive. This took up a lot of time, but this was one of the most interesting exercises done throughout the project. So I asked them questions pertaining to each part of the experience. So I asked them, like, why do you buy something? What are the triggers? What are the questions? How do you get information? How do you get to know things? What are your beliefs? What influence you to buy, eat, or consume something? What are the preferences? Why do you eat? Why? Question, doubts, history, everything. I just went all. Like, I asked them questions. I followed them around. It was not just a one-day event. I observed them when they were cooking something, because sometimes when you talk to people, they don't essentially tell you what they do, right? So essentially, I just shadowed people around at the workplace, at home, and it gave me a lot of insights. This was an interview mapping done. So for all the 24 people that I talked to, I did a couple of interview mapping like this. And then what happened is, when I plotted them on sheets, I realized that some of them started looking similar. I superimposed some of the sheets, and that led me to make personas. Time to meet the other friends over here. This is Sandy, you've met her already. This is Rahul, that's Anita, and that's Radha. So all of them are working professionals who have similar problems with their food experiences. Like, for example, Rahul is a fitness freak who wants to be fitter but does not know what to eat, and he does not like cooking. Anita is a homemaker who lives with her 2 kids and her family, and she really likes cooking. She does not love cooking because she's like, my family is asking me for different things every day. What do I do? And Radha is a school teacher who lives with her husband and her child, and basically she does not get enough time with her family. So if you see that all of them have different, some people are very comfortable with technology and some are not. And some people are very reactive in their health and some are very proactive. What does that mean? Reactive means, for example, I eat something that I like, that's being reactive. But proactive means, does this suit me? Will this help me be fitter in an essential sense? That's called being proactive. So I plotted them, and I'm pretty sure that some of you might feel like which category you fall under. I had many people telling them, oh, this is the category that we fall under. But all of them had their own problems. And so using these 4 people as the main characters for my project, I started driving the project further ahead. There were major insights that I observed. For example, people have problems with food experiences because they don't have enough time or information. The food procurement quality is not good. They don't know where to buy stuff from, and they don't know if it's good enough, if it's of the good quality. History about self. I don't know if something that I've eaten does it suit me or not. It's generally your mom says, this is good for you because we've seen it, we've observed it. But do you know that information? Access to quality food ingredients again. And social versus solitary, especially today. There are some people who like to cook alone, and when they cook alone, they experiment. But when people cook in social groups, it's more fun, but the tendency to experiment is lower. So how could we solve this issue? These were the 6 major design directions that came up in the project. I could enable people to eat healthier at home. I could design a motivation around being healthy. Or maybe you could just simplify the food shopping and planning experience, forget the consumption part. Probably create concepts to grow your own food at home. Or make your food production personal, maybe within a community. Or even reduce wastage. So concepts cards were created. Some of the interesting concepts, there were about, I think, 17 or 18 different concepts. We put them in cards and then we went and talked to people and then we started validating, okay, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? It sort of led us to a hierarchy of what people want. And because it's the users that are most important. So for example, this idea was about, what if the food that gets wasted by you, maybe some people could take it and they could make it as a manure so that it goes back into food production instead of having chemicals and pesticides, right? So that way maybe your food production, the food that you consume is more healthy. Another one was probably, what if you could Uberify your food delivery? Instead of waiting for you to go and buy food from somewhere or waiting for someone to deliver at your home, what if the person who's nearest to your place could drop fresh food and produce at your home? So again, these 4 people, the core was again back to this. How can we help them in the best way? So welcome, this is Platterly. Platterly was the result of the 6 months project. What Platterly does is that you can use Platterly. It is an application through your mobile phone, and it will deliver fresh ingredients at your place. What it actually does, how it works like this. So there is an assumed repository of a food nutrition data, preferably crowd-funded. And then using your health data, using your information, mining the big data, it will give you personalized recipes that are suitable for you, for every person. So that when you get the recipes, you know that it will suit me, it's customized around you. So in the future, probably what shape it could take as was in the vicinity, saying as in the background of a service design concept, it could probably use the big data information like, let's say, weather. Maybe the application decides that you need iron content, but maybe if it's raining, probably, okay, spinach, leafy green vegetables are not what you need right now, but maybe something else to compensate for that. And then probably it could also take your friends and family's information because they're also important to you, and then you could together have like one eating concept, one food experience together. So instead of being a static source of information where the app is just throwing data at you, the app was designed to learn and evolve and adapt with you. So for example, through this app, you can set your preferences. Tell the app what you like, what you don't like, what suits you, what doesn't suit you, so that the app gets to know you a little by little every time. And then maybe the app, like many other apps that are in the market today, it will give you similar recipes, not just based on your taste, but based on your nutritional information. It could probably help people who want to get back to those recipes later, so you can save it, tag it, share it, and stuff like that. What if instead of a map for directions, you had a map for food? Let's say you want to search, I want to get green salad somewhere close by. So it will show you all the places that have the local produce of fresh salad near you. What if a cookbook calendar? Like, what if you want, let's say it's post-Diwali time. You've like, I do. We've all binge eaten, and now we want to know how is the community around us coping? How is the community detoxifying itself, right? So probably through this cookbook calendar, we can tag who all are we following and what they are eating right now. So back to those people. Rahul the fitness freak, we can help him because now he knows what are the foods and what are the recipes that will work for him. All these will get delivered. So the essential part is that app will take your information and it will give you recipes, and once you order those recipes, it will give you that food in pre-measured quantities at your place with a recipe so that you know how to cook it. So now we have solved Rahul's problem in that way. Sandy, she's like a social butterfly, but she does not like cooking alone, so maybe cooking with friends will help her too. Anita had this problem because she wanted to like balance everyone's taste buds in her family. So maybe giving her a lot of recipes that she knows are healthy and locally produced will help her a lot. And then Radha wanted to spend some time with her family. So maybe if all these recipes that she orders and she gets fresh ingredients that are pre-measured and pre-portioned so that it does not get wasted, she can sit at home and cook with her kids and family. So this was the making process. The making process was one roller coaster because when I started making the app, I realized the amount of detail that you put into the app drives a lot of feedback. Because the first iteration was a total failure because when I started giving too much of detail, people started getting confused about, it was not about what information they needed. They said, this is looking nice, this is not looking nice, this is confusing me. But I wanted to understand if the information flow was clear. So then again, went stage by stage. We did like whiteboarding. This is called whiteboarding, where we make like low fidelity wireframes. And then we started improving the layer of details again and again. Did a little bit of visualization and branding, because unless the final form takes place, people do not give you quality feedback. And prototyping and demo. I tried demoing in web format and using a demo software for the phone, so that we just distributed phones to people and asked them to quickly play with it and give us feedback. So this was the final look and feel. It was designed for an Android OS, visual field with material design. It would take information from your wearables and GPS. That was the identified sources of information. And closing thoughts are essentially what I realized apart from the project boundaries are, children are the next source of, imparting our thoughts to the next generation. So when I talk to people, certain people had very rigid thoughts, but children were more malleable and flexible, and they would attack information very quickly. And human behavior is not a one-time step. It takes a lot of iterations. So designing human behavior is complicated, and HCI is just one of the ways to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhuvana. Now we can move on to the Q&A.
Yeah, I would like to know whether you have plans to integrate with health monitoring smart devices so that people need not enter information manually,
Right.
and it will be much more easier.
Right.
So maybe for the first time users especially.
Sure. That's a good question. Actually, so when I did the project with Samsung, that was essentially where it went. We were planning to integrate it with the S-Health application, and then that would be the future direction it would take if it was brought into development.
Hey Bhuvana, this is Jivita here.
Hi.
Hey.
Sorry.
So first of all, a very brilliant presentation, and the app is fantastic.
Thank
But
you.
my question is more not towards the app, but towards the presentation that you had. So can you just give us some insights on, I know there are a lot of efforts went through the graphics you have done, the prototyping, the whiteboarding, and a lot of stuff. So can you just share with us what kind of software you used, and how the work went behind creating these presentations and
Okay.
stuff like that?
Okay, so the presentation is in PowerPoint, but I use digital sketches. So the sketches that you saw were made using a Wacom. A Wacom is like a digital board. So sometimes I make sketches on paper and then just digitize in Photoshop or Adobe. And then certain animations were done in Photoshop. Otherwise, I use Sketch also. It's just a trial and error. There's never this thing. This presentation, I think, was the third iteration. It went a lot of back and forth, but that's how it is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi. So
Hi.
my question is, let's say I'm the new user.
Right.
So I get this app. So do I have to maybe some 50 odd questions about what kind of likes, dislike I might have to build the database for me, because it won't have the database. So how do you get all those kind of data? And it had options. Let's say today I feel like cooking. So then, and I am residing in a specific area. So how do I get all the data into this? Meaning I am in Bangalore in XYZ location. So for that XYZ location, there would be a data collated that if somebody wants to cook specific ABC type, then I think this is the right choice because I am a specific kind of a person. So how do you get that? And you might travel, and so how does it really work, the data collection?
Right. So when you saw the presentation, there was this one slide that said this app relies on two information sources. One is your medical health information, let's say, that you manually enter, or you use through your wearables. The other one is there are certain libraries that are being built up, which are crowdsourced informations of what they do is they basically identify certain groups of people, and then they say for these groups of people, based on these preferences, these are the recipes that are being built. So there are a couple of these organizations that are in US currently, I believe. So based on that, your question is right. Initially, I had like a set of 20 questions, but when you're using the app for the first time, nobody's going to use 20 questions, right? So that was brought down into a matrix set, pictorially into just 4 sets. So once you do that, the app should start learning by itself. And for the location part, it essentially works with the GPS. So we relied on that when this app would be installed, it would ask permission for you to use your location data. So that would just connect the dots and give you better information. Hi.
So, Ms. Yes, nice presentation. I really like the thought behind it.
Okay.
My question is, you spoke about some wastage of food, I believe.
Right.
So, how is the app taking care of that if food is getting wasted in one house and in another house somebody is not ready to make it? How does the app connect these two things? Is there any such?
Like right now, the whole idea through this app was not to waste food in one house. For example, so if you use the application and you do a recipe, you choose a recipe, it will ask you the people count. So based on the people count, it gives you like, let's say 30 grams of carrots and 20 grams of beans in a specific ratio. But to your specific question, that was another concept which could not be implemented in the 6-month frame. Was another idea was, let's say that there's a startup that could take all the food that is wasted from different homes. They could make it as a compost or a manure, and then they would give it back to people who would like to do gardening or do organic farming at their places, essentially closing the loop. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.